That's why it's an option. Those who don't want to do it, those who have written you letters and said, don't do this, what do they tell? What about the guy that wants to do it? So it's an option. They will have to talk to their members, they will have to talk to the employers, they'll have to talk to their trustees, and they will have to make a decision. And if they can come up with that rescue plan, they ought to be allowed to do that. The time has come to let them do this. These plans are losing altitude every day that they can't make these adjustments. Hopefully a pickup in the economy, an increase in employment, an increase in enrollments, all will help them. But they still need the option to be able to make these judgments. I would hope that my colleagues here in the Congress would trust these workers enough to give them this opportunity and this responsibility to make these decisions about their retirement. Not our wish list of how we would like it to be, but their retirement today that's in threat of collapse. And I urge my colleagues to support this provision and to support this legislation.
Gentleman from California reserves his time. The gentleman from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now I'm very, very pleased to yield 3 minutes to the chairman of the Subcommittee on Health, Employment, Labor, and Pensions, the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Rowe.
Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the chairman. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of the Multiemployer Pension Reform Act contained in the underlying bill. This bipartisan legislation will strengthen and in some cases save retirement benefits for more than 10 million Americans who are enrolled in a multi-employer pension plan. Let's say that again. This legislation will save retirement benefits. While many multi-employer plans are in strong financial shape, the number of financially distressed plans is a cause for great concern. Among these troubled plans is a Central States plan covering 410,000 participants, which the PBGC projects will become insolvent in the next 10 years. The PBGC's own finances are in dire straits. A report released by PBGC just last month shows that its multi-employer program has a deficit of more than $42 billion, an all-time high. The agency also believes that there's a 90% chance it becomes insolvent by 2025 without change. Taken together, these financial challenges pose a clear and present danger to the retirement of those who receive those benefits from the PBGC and those who expect the PBGC to serve as a backstop if their pension plan fails. It's not a question of if the worst will happen for some of these plans. It's only a question of when. The proposal before us today is a product of 6 subcommittee hearings over 4 years, countless hours of discussion and debate between management and labor, and thoughtful negotiations between Republicans and Democrats. This legislation will give pension plans the tools to save themselves without a taxpayer bailout. And for those plans who are beyond repair, this proposal will strengthen the PBGC's finances to help ensure that retirees continue to receive a benefit. What we're asking of these plans is hard. If there was some other way to resolve this problem without a taxpayer bailout, we would have pursued it. But there's not another way, and we have to do what's necessary to protect the retirement benefits for those Americans who earned them. Businesses and unions alike understand this. That's why the Klein-Miller proposal is supported by companies including Kroger, Nestle USA, as well as labor unions, including the UFCW, the SEIU, the North America's Building and Trade Unions. I commend Chairman Klein and Ranking Member Miller for their tireless efforts on this issue. They've shown all of us that bipartisan compromise for the greater good is possible. I also want to thank Ed Gilroy and Andy Banducci and the rest of the staff on both sides of the aisle for the long, hard hours they've logged on this effort. This desperately needed pension reform is good for workers, it's good for retirees, it's good for business, and it's good for America. And I encourage my colleagues to strongly support this. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman has expired. The gentleman from California.
I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Norcross.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes. 3 minutes.
Thank you. Irony that we are having this discussion today, and first I want to thank the ranking member for yielding the time. I was sworn in just a few weeks ago. Prior to that, my entire career has been in working in a system that supported a multi-employer plan. I went home last night and opened my mail. I received my first pension check, which happens to be from a multi-employer plan. I understand how it works, and I understand how it doesn't work, and that's what we're here to discuss today. The fact of the matter is the multi-employer is a very different animal than what most people traditionally think of as a pension plan. Multi-employer, it's the employee groups, the unions working together with management to make these decisions. And in a perfect world, which I've been blessed with my plan, that check arrives on time and it will be there. But there are other plans that are certainly not in that condition and have not been that way for a very long time. We can continue to bury our heads in the sand and wait for that implosion because it is going to happen. Or we can do the right thing and give people their voice back. Let those plans have the ability to ask their memberships what they want to do. They got there through that cooperation. Might not be their own fault that the plan is failing. There are many conditions that cause that. But the way the rules are now, they have no voice. They're silent, and I am just here to make sure that we have an absolute clear understanding. This is about giving the employers and the employees their voice back. I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now I'd like to yield a minute and a half to another member of the committee, the gentlelady from Indiana, Ms. Brooks.
Gentlelady from Indiana is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to thank Chairman Klein, Ranking Member Miller, and Dr. Rowe for working tirelessly on this incredibly difficult piece of legislation that I know impacts so many people. As you've heard on the Health Subcommittee, we had over 6 different hearings on this matter, examining the difficulties facing troubled multi-employer plans and the looming insolvency of the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation that is tasked with backstopping pension plans. During those hearings, I heard from the president of the North American Building Trades Union that said ultimately, quote, in order for individual pensioners to receive benefits from our plans, the plans themselves must be preserved, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, without this Klein-Miller pension reform, the insolvency of these plans is exactly what will happen, ultimately hurting those most in need. Just last month, PBGC released its annual report, which showed the deficit in this insurance program. It's increased from $8.3 billion to $42.4 billion in just 1 year. At this rate, the PBGC anticipates plans will become insolvent in the next decade. That means pensioners won't even be able to count on the minimum to backstop programs that are terminal. We must act now to give the trustees of these plans the tools necessary to allow the unions and their members the opportunity to salvage these multi-employer pension model. The longer we wait, the more the problem grows and the more painful it becomes for pensioners and employers alike. Our constituents didn't send us here to take the easy path, but rather to do the hard work that must be done. And that is why so much is at stake, and that's why this provision is so necessary. I urge its passage. Thank you, and yield back.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized for as much time
Chairman,
as he
I would
may
just
consume.
like, so my colleagues fully understand this, to read the list of some of the unions that are supporting this legislation. The North American Building Trades Union, International Council of Employers and Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers, International Union of Operating Engineers, International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, United Association of Journeymen Apprentices and Pipe Fitting Industry, Service Employees International Union, United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America, Actors Equity Association, the American Federation of Musicians, a very diverse group of American workers who are asking us to give them the option to make decisions about the future of their pensions. Some of these pensions are in better shape than others, but they're all asking for this right. For those who may be opposed to this legislation,